So the FOP's always been willing to listen and learn and talk about all these discussions. We obviously have had negotiations in the past uh, when he's either been on council or as mayor. We've had the ability, the mayor's had the ability to push that issue in negotiations. So we're always willing to listen. I hear talks about, a citizen review board, but did we give details on what that means? It sounds to me like just a theory or concept. The problems with that is there are a couple things. Is the lodge, the FOP, and let me make it clear who the FOP is. The mayor tried to make it clear that we were separate entities. The Fraternal Order of Police is every law enforcement officer in Franklin County. So every Columbus police officer, every officer out here, that's who the Fraternal Order of Police is. So he's speaking of. So we have the ability to have those conversations anytime. I'll give you a great example with body cameras. People wanted that for transparency. The Fraternal Order of Police, the officers, we agreed to that. We believed in that. We signed an agreement that said absolutely for transparency for the public, and that's a great example. So, absolutely we have the ability to do that. We will always listen. The details are always important. We all want to know what those things are before we come out and blanketly say we agree to anything, because there's a couple things we won't jeopardize. We will never jeopardize the safety of our officers or the safety of the public. And we've been clear throughout this entire protest, riot situations that that's been our position. We've always stood up for the officers and their safety down there with the confusion that has happened. And we've always stood up for the legitimate citizens that are abiding by the law, that are just traveling through downtown, that have been victimized and terrorized, quite honestly, at times, and the businesses that have been destroyed and burnt down. So we've always sided with the citizens. So we are absolutely with the citizens. Yes.
So, will you participate in the discussion and the formation of this civilian review board? Because the mayor says it's going to happen one way or another.
So I think that's great. I do appreciate, I know the mayor answered that he called. I appreciate I got a call from him a few hours for his press conference this morning to set up a meeting, as we had asked to have those conversations. He's creating this panel, and I'm glad that he wants us to have input and be a part of that from a law enforcement presence, an officer or two on there to have some input to explain and have good discussions with the community.
How would you assess right now the relationship between the police and the community?
Well, I think there's a very large portion of the community that absolutely supports the police. They call into my office and they call down to the police department. They speak to officers on the street, businesses, and everyone else. They understand we're trying to do our job. We have a difficult job, and the mayor alluded to that, and we appreciate that, that there are peaceful protesters that we are there to protect for their rights. And then there are people that are engaging in criminal activity, violence, destroying the community. And we're there to stop those people from doing that. And so that is a fine line. And he said that in his press conference. It's a difficult job. And we appreciate that he acknowledged that.
Um, he talked about kind of a mandate from the community, including CEOs and leaders in higher education
Mm-hmm.
and faith leaders all saying that there needs to be this independent citizen review board for incidents of police misconduct. I guess, do you sense a mandate from the community? And if so, to what extent does that play into, um, the FOP's position with formation of such a board?
Well, I don't know who he's speaking of specifically, what businesses or who that is. I do think today's press conference the mayor did was a lot about discussing the failures and the miscommunications that happen in the city that cause a lot of this destruction and the citizens to be terrorized at certain points that we're driving downtown. I think it's important to understand, when you're talking about these citizen review boards, whatever that is, since we haven't had that defined by us, there's a couple things I think people need to understand very clearly. So Minneapolis has a citizen review board. They spend $700,000 a year of taxpayer money on a citizen review board. Now, I don't know, but I would venture to say a lot of people aren't thinking that's working out so well in Minneapolis based on what's going on. And Chicago, $13 million, I'm told, of their taxpayer dollars for a citizen review board. I think a lot of people would agree Chicago's got some issues as well. And so we're not in favor of just doing something to do it because it sounds good. Okay? If we want to talk about change with the officers' relationship with the community for the betterment of officers and the community without jeopardizing the safety for either, I think it's important we discuss something that works. And we have those conversations and not just frivolously create something with taxpayer dollars that has failed elsewhere. We need to do things the Columbus way. We need to find things outside of the box, not just repeat failures in other places. I don't think that's beneficial to the public or our officers.
But I guess, do you think that there needs to be a new way of looking at cases of alleged misconduct?
Look, I think the process we have has been very clear on that as well. If the mayor wants to talk about any of those things, whether it be through negotiations or phone calls or anything else, we're open to that discussion. But let me make it clear. We've heard a lot of things about systemic racism in the Columbus Police Department. The Fraternal Order Police hires no one. We don't promote people. We don't do any of those things. That's all done by elected officials. So if there's these problems in here, that's not the Fraternal Order Police. That is not our failure. And so I think that's important. When we talk about change, yeah, maybe there are some changes. The city has the ability, when they talk about hiring and who they want to hire and have degrees, that is not the Fraternal Order Police. We do not have that ability. That is the city. So while we're wanting to point out some of these things, it's not the Fraternal Order Police stopping anyone from doing some of those things. That is what they are doing.
And lastly, I guess, the issue of communicating to the public, and specifically, I guess, to those who are protesting, where the line is drawn between peaceful, nonviolent protests and police intervention.
Yeah, I think there's some important answers still. Someone from the city needs to stand up and explain. If you're peacefully protesting, are you allowed to obstruct traffic, be in the street? Those are illegal acts. You're not allowed to stand in the middle of the street. You are not allowed to block traffic and make them turn around, impede other people's rights. And if that's what the position the city is going to take, they need to make that clear to the officers and the public.
But the city allowed that to happen for a period of time.
I think
Block the streets.
I think they need to make it perfectly clear if that's their position. They need to let the citizens as well as the officers know that so we can effectively do our job and protect the citizens and protect our officers. No.
Right. The mayor did talk about being very clear to officers directly saying if you see another officer doing something that is not in line with what the community believes is appropriate, it's your obligation to immediately intervene. Is that something new or different?
It's not new. Okay, we've always had rules of conduct and directives that talk about that. And I think that's important that officers always have had the ability and the requirement and the duty to do that. And so I don't think that's anything new for the Division of Police. This is the thing, and specifically in Columbus, but certainly all of Franklin County agencies, we are steps ahead of a lot of communities. We already have a lot of policies in place that they discuss. And we need to give credit where credit's due. The reality is we are better than a lot of places. We know that. This community is better in a lot of places, which is why we should do things the Columbus way and not somebody else's way.
Do you think rhetoric is getting in the way here?
I'm sorry?
Do you think rhetoric is getting in the way here?
I really don't know. I just think it's unfortunate, whatever it is, for the officers and the citizens of Columbus that are just trying to be law-abiding citizens right now.
Also, I got another question you can address to Ted. You represent Worthington Police?
Yes.
You know, they had an issue Saturday as well on a smaller scale, but
Yeah.
same thing, we're blocking traffic at a major intersection.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not specifically to Columbus, although that's where we've seen the vast majority of the violence. But, it's questions everywhere. Are we going to allow that to happen? Are we going to allow those laws to be broken? Is that okay? And the elected officials need to stand up and make a decision and make it clear to the public.